Hey there. Welcome to episode 26 of the Boob Report podcast, powered by Helix Interactive. Today, I'm hanging out with Heather Lawrence Harrington, a recent breast cancer survivor who is sharing her experience in using the cold cap treatment while going through chemotherapy. This is going to be a good one. Let's get started. Okay, we are very excited today because I've got a fellow volleyball player as one of my guests. Welcome, Heather. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited about this. Now, we were introduced by friends because you are a fellow warrior woman, fellow breast cancer survivor. And we have some interesting things to talk about today because some of your treatments, I didn't have to do a lot of that stuff. So I think it's going to be very beneficial to women to hear about your experience and what you went through. So let's just dive in, talk a little bit about yourself and when you got that nice phone call.
Yeah, for sure. I even think about it. I think been 1 year since I went through my 12-week cycle of chemo and 6 months since I got done with my Hylecta shots, which is Herceptin. If anybody, knows HER2 positive breast cancer, you'll get Herceptin treatment in there. So it's been a year as of this week that the bad stuff, I remember ringing that bell,
Mhm.
1 year ago, and my girlfriends came and they brought balloons and champagne and all the stuff. And I was like, well, I'm not drinking champagne, but I will hold those balloons. um, so it's been a journey, but yeah, I decided to go in. I turned 40 and I asked my OB, I said, hey, I think I want to get a mammogram. My grandma passed away when she was 43. I was like, I feel like I should go. And she said, oh, we're recommending 45, even with family history. And I was like, huh. And I'm small enough that, whenever we do our checks, like there was nothing that would say like, we better, take a peek at that.
Right.
It was a year later,
Mhm.
when I was 41, I said, hey, I don't know why, but I really think I wanted one. I was like, can I just get one?
Yeah.
And she was like, sure. And I went in and I got the letter in the mail that says like, can you come back? Things weren't quite clear or whatever, and everybody I talked to was like, oh, that's nothing. Almost everybody gets that letter. And I was like, oh, because at first I was a little worried, I was like, oh no, what did they see?
Right.
And then everybody assured me like, no, not a big deal. So I went in again, and they had scheduled an ultrasound, MRI, and a biopsy and all these things without, and I was like, oh, this is not just a whoopsie, we didn't see something. This is like, we saw something.
So they had all that scheduled when you went back in.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah,
Okay.
so this was definitely not like, it's a generic letter you get that says like, can you come back?
Right.
But
Right.
also says like, don't freak out in the letter. So
Oh my God.
so it's like, okay, I'm not going to freak out because the letter said not to freak out. And also my friends and family said, don't freak out. And then I get there and the radiologist was digging in and feeling around. And she was like, oh, okay. Yep. And just looking at the screen and feeling around and doing the things. And she said, yeah, I think there's a sparkle there. I think that's cancer. And I was like, I
Wow.
mean,
Hearing
I'm
that
laying,
impact. Yeah.
boobs up, and I was like, what,
Mhm.
excuse me? I was like, and she said, I think that sparkle is cancer. I mean, we'll verify, of course, but I'm pretty sure. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So, and COVID time, this is COVID, so I
Oh,
was like laying there by
bonus.
myself and I was like,
Yeah.
okay. She said, no big deal. I think we can just pop it out, and she kept making this like, almost like a hook, like she was just going to dig in there and get it out. And I was like, well, this seems okay. This seems fine,
Yeah.
and then asked me who my surgeon was. And I was like, I don't have a surgeon. Shockingly, I've never been in this scenario. So I
Mhm.
don't have a surgeon. And so, I asked for recommendations and they gave me a name of somebody and called that person on my way home. I was like, I think, and I had the MRI, but it didn't have the results of the MRI. So
Okay.
they were going to send him over to her, and she randomly had a cancellation the next day. I went in the next day. I was by myself. I had to be, and I had called my family and said, this is no big deal. They're going to pull it out. They're going to
Yeah.
jump in and they're going to just take it out. It's not a big deal. This is no big deal. And they were like, okay, good, great, wonderful. And then I got to the surgeon's office and she had a PowerPoint presentation and had my MRI results and said, like, you are stage 3. And I was like, I don't even know what we're talking about right now.
Right.
I thought she had somebody else's chart because I thought we were just going to boop it on out and it was teeny tiny. And then turns out it was 3 tumors across my left breast. And it was like 7 centimeters across, just like, which is like my whole boob,
Right.
And so, yeah. And then said, you're going to need chemo. And I was just like, I can't even tell you how shocked I am because of,
Yeah,
1,000 reasons. Like, I didn't think
exactly.
I needed it in the first place. I was recommended not even to get a mammogram. And then it was like,
Mhm.
doot. And then all of a sudden I was
Well,
stage 3.
just to interrupt you there, I find it fascinating and a little concerning, actually, that your doctor, knowing your family history with your grandmother, it was my understanding that they go 10 years back.
I thought so too.
So say your grandmother at 45, you said, so
43.
43, so 33, you should have been scheduled for your first mammogram.
And honestly, I think about it and I 100% think this was all kind of fate or whatever you want to call it. If it's a God job or whatever you believe in, like this was that, because my tumors were so fast growing.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have had it. I wouldn't have had breast cancer like when I would want to get my first mammogram. Nothing probably would have shown up.
Right.
I know for a fact if nothing showed up at 40, I would have waited until 45. I would have been dead.
Okay.
Because I mean, whatever, somebody is guiding me in a lot of ways, and whether it's intuition or what, I don't know what it is, but
yeah,
even down the road, after I get this, here's your PowerPoint presentation and your packet, full of cancer gear, and you're like, I don't know what this is. So then I have to call my family and say, just kidding. It's not just going to boop out. We're going to go, I have to do chemo and I have to do all this stuff. And they were just like, oh my God. So all of that, and I got recommended to this oncologist that works well with this surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
Went in and it was like, we're going to give you the blast of all the worst. It's, every 3 weeks, you're going to get, this blast of chemo with all of the drugs, all the 4 big ones that they, give you. And it's going to last for 6 rounds.
Okay.
And then we'll do surgery after. We'll do your mastectomy and then we'll do, reconstruction after that. So plan on like a year and a half, and I was like, and I own gyms. Like, I'm a physically fit human who loves anything active. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I teach fitness and I will have to be out for a year and a half. And I was like, I just went through, the worst pandemic of, getting shut down and now all of this. So rough to get that news.
Yeah.
And then somebody was like, maybe you should get a second opinion. And I was like, yeah, I think I will. Of course, that's what people do.
Sure.
So I went and I talked to another gal and she was like, I would do surgery first and then chemo. And I literally had two paths that were like, here you go. And both of them sent me to their like tumor panels. And both were split down the middle on everything. Like, no, you don't need radiology. Yes, you do. No, you don't need, surgery first. You need surgery. And everybody was like, and so I talked to like 4 other doctors that I was like, if you were to get this, what would you do?
Right.
And all of them said, well, I probably do chemo first to see if it worked. We shrink the tumor and then we, go surgery. And I was like, okay. So I had fully planned to go that route. It was again, eating at my soul. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't, I was just, and granted, not sleeping because something was not sitting well with that. And I went in to get my port put in and I'm sitting there like ready to go into the operating room. And I just got up and I said, it's not right. I gotta go.
Wow.
And I just walked out. So I then called the oncologist and I said, I don't want to go this route. I'm going to go this other route. I need to just pause. This is too much. Like it all happened so fast. And I feel like I was just like mind blown. And so I scheduled my mastectomy, scheduled, to get my port in and all that stuff. Got it all done. As I was getting out of surgery, the surgeon looks at me, she goes like, you must have some sort of, sixth sense, because you doing surgery first was way the right choice. It didn't go into your lymph node. Like everything looked good. We got the tumors out. We got everything. So it was crazy that it happened. And I got the expanders put in, which is the most miserable part of
oh my God.
it all.
Whoever invented those has just
Really
so evil.
Totally. I'm like, I called them my raisin bags, because they were just wrinkly and disgusting. And then you go in every week to get them filled. And it was the most painful thing you've ever done. I'm like, how could this be painful? And it's just like, your skin is like, and it's not that they were big. They were smaller than my, I was like, what is happening? I don't know why this looks so bad.
Don't you just know that our bodies are going, what are you doing?
In my body, I'm very, I've taught yoga for 15 years. And so I'm very, like, I know when stuff is up, and I was like, my body is rejecting this foreign body. Yes. It knows that this is not a part of me, and it's going to shoot these out my armpits at any time. It's just going to eject. So yeah, by far the most miserable part. So had the expanders in for the whole time I was going through chemo, but going through chemo, I had the option. My doctor chatted with me and she said, hey, there's this thing that in the UK and in, overseas, like it's super common and it's paid for over there. It's not paid for here. It's an extra cost, but it's the cold cap. And the cold cap helps you keep your hair in your head, hopefully. Some people don't have luck with it. I had great luck with it. I kept all of my hair and I lost every bit from, like my eyebrows were gone, my eyelashes were gone, but all of my hair on my head, you would not know that I was going through chemo. So I didn't have to, I didn't have to get those weird looks of people like, you're giving me that. And it was funny. That was one of the reasons that people told me not to do it. I got on a really terrible Facebook group that I shouldn't have got on. Honestly, that was probably the worst thing. It scared the daylights out of me. If everybody's post, I was like, just fearful of everything, reading everybody else's posts. And I had posted a question like, anybody use the cold cap? Tell me your, thoughts, results. And most people were like, but no one will know you're going through chemo and going through such a hard time. And I find that funny because that was the reason I chose it. Yeah. When that was the reason somebody wouldn't choose it, so it's right. And I would say, if I went somewhere, if I was at the grocery store or whatever, talking to someone, they would be like, how are you doing? What's going on? It's like, oh, I'm midway through my chemo. And they're like, what? Almost didn't believe me because I had all of my hair. But I did have to get eyebrows like tattooed on because I looked real funny.
Well, I felt the same way, when there was a possibility. I, again, was very lucky. I did not have to do chemo or radiation, but my thing was, and I don't know if it's vanity or what, but I didn't want to look sick. I didn't want people looking at me and, feeling sorry for me.
Bad eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. When I told them that I had breast cancer, the look on their face, I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And honestly, nobody knows how to talk about anything other than, and you just get so used to talking about cancer, you almost don't have anything else to talk about. Right. And when you get done, like now, people, it's so weird. It's the after, like the worst part of chemo is all the after, because the chemo, the poison's still in your body and you're still feeling like hot garbage for quite a while. Yeah. But you're not going through it. So everybody's like, oh, isn't it great to be done? And you're like, well, I'm not done. Not really. It's still in there. Yeah. It's just like still poison all over the place and just, but like anybody who has questions on the cold cap, like there's great resources out there, but mine, I use the Digna cap because that's what my hospital had the machine for, and
Okay.
it plugs in. So every day I would get there. Every Tuesday, I went through 12 rounds of 3 drugs instead of all 4 drugs, which I thought was a huge improvement. This oncologist I chose because she said, I don't want to overtreat you. I don't
Mhm.
want to undertreat you. I want to treat you for
Right.
what you have. And so that made all the sense in the world to me, to get it out first. I felt better. I felt like it was out of my body and it couldn't grow anymore because it was gone.
Yeah.
And then to go through chemo after, I was like, okay, that feels good. And she said, you might as well try this. I hate when I make people lose their hair. And I was like, yeah. And I kept going wishy-washy on it because I did feel vain. I
Hmm.
felt like this is not, but at the same time, I had a 5-year-old
Right.
and I didn't want to scare her,
Hmm.
and our dog, literally, this is a true story, a week ago got diagnosed with cancer, and he's a sweet golden retriever.
Oh.
And Quinn, my daughter,
Mhm.
we were telling her, I said, Meatball has has cancer. And she said, well, what's cancer? And I said, oh, it's what mommy had. And she goes, oh. So it was like he has a cold, like,
Yeah.
because I made it seem so like it's no big deal. It's no big
Mhm.
deal. I've got this. Like, and I mean, it was a lot worse than I made it to be, but I had to make it like no big deal, like, to her, because I wanted her to still have a mom that was fully functioning.
Right.
So I think that was a major, reason I chose to do the cold cap.
Hmm.
But bizarro, to have no hair, no arm hair, you're like, what in the world? And I felt like a baby seal that was
Yeah.
just slick as an otter. And then like my hair was on, and I was like,
What did that feel like? I mean,
oh,
was it when calling it a cold cap? I mean, is it literally
it's
cold and
so miserable.
okay.
And there's no way around to say like,
Mhm.
it is not a walk in the park. You have got to have a good, healthy amount of pain tolerance, and you have to be like almost in a meditative state
Okay.
for 12. I mean, it was a long time. It was like 8 hours a day. Um, for every, I had to show up at 7:30. I wet down my head. So I put my head underneath the sink that was in the room, and I wet it all down. And then you would gently comb, because you can't really comb your hair a lot when you're doing this. You don't want to do anything. You could only wash it like, I only wash mine like once every 2 weeks. So it was very like, don't touch it,
Mhm.
don't style it, don't curl, no heat, no anything. So I followed all the rules, which is probably why it worked so good.
Mhm.
But the nurses would put this, um, it had like these weird veins in this cap that water would run through, and then we'd hook up the tube, and then we'd put this fitted cap over the top of that cap.
Mhm.
And to the point where it was like, I mean, it was this, it was like an old football helmet, the leather football helmets.
Yeah.
It looked like that over the top. So it was like super tight, and it had to be tight around your chin.
Mhm.
Like, so you were tightening it as tight as you could because you wanted that seal.
Mhm.
And so they would start the machine, and it would get to -22 degrees, and it had to get that cold before your chemo started. So you had to do that for, an hour before,
Mhm.
and then an hour after chemo. So you were there just frozen. So I had to have a heating blanket and 4 blankets like on top of me. And I would just lay in this recliner, and your head's like frozen,
Mhm.
frozen. But I would turn on a podcast and I would just zone out. I was allergic to one of the chemo drugs,
Mhm.
as we found out quickly. So they had to do steroids and Benadryl before. So we called it like my spiritual journey. The Benadryl would send me into just like I was not asleep, but I was not awake. I was like in la la land
Right.
for a while.
Wow.
So that helped, I think, because I couldn't function.
Mhm. Right.
So yeah, but highly recommend if, I mean, if you're one of those people that was like, oh God, I don't want to lose my hair. It
Mhm.
stinks, to have people look at you and be like, oh,
Yeah.
sad, like, but also not necessary. I mean, you can lose your hair and still look just stunningly beautiful. I've had so many people
Right.
like, wow, you look gorgeous with no hair. So, um, yeah, I just felt like it was a good choice for me. And it was a choice for science too. You know, I wish it was covered here in the United States. It's
Mhm.
not, but um, I had people from my gym pay for it. Like they were so
Oh,
sweet. They donated money, and yeah, it
nice.
was really, really sweet that they did that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of my journey with it. And, you know, sitting there by yourself for, you know, during chemo, during COVID was not very fun, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you know, it gave me time by myself just to,
Kind of, yeah, do the same
yeah.
thing. You know, for me, and we've talked about this before, you know, we went live and then where we've met before, every single woman's journey is different. So if a woman decides to do the cold cap or she decides not to or whatever, it has to be the decision that she makes, you know,
Yes.
of what she's comfortable with. Um, I mean, I so appreciate you sharing your experience because, like I said, I wasn't very familiar with it, and I've heard about it, but I hadn't heard in detail what all was going
Mhm.
on there, and that's a lot to
It
have to
was
deal with.
intense. It was
Yeah.
by far like, I mean, today in Colorado, it's 2 degrees
Mhm.
out. And I think about like 24 degrees colder than that was on my head, and it's miserable out there. And I was like,
Yeah.
it is so cold. But yeah, honestly, and I always say, people ask all the time, like, if it comes back, would you do the cold cap again?
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know. You know, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
Quinn was just so little
Mhm.
that it would be scary for her, I imagine, you know, and sad for her to see me. So I don't know, maybe it was
Yeah.
great to have my hair, but at the same
Right.
time, was it necessary? No.
Yeah.
So
Well, you know, I mean, it's again, it's a decision that you have to make. You have to, I went and got the genetic testing when I got my diagnosis just to see. I mean, I knew that cancer didn't run in my family, but I wanted to see if there was possibly a chance that I could have a reoccurrence, you know, if I
yeah.
did have the gene. Everything came back, you know, totally fine. I remember them calling me from the genetic counselors, you know, they call me and they go, well, good news, you know, your genetic test came back clean. And I'm like, yet this is still happening.
Totally.
Like, yay, good news. But okay. Yeah, but
Totally.
I was like, I'm not going through this again. Not gonna do
Mm-mm.
it. I mean, if I got it the first time, who's to say I'm not gonna get it again? So just take them both.
Taken both.
Yeah.
I know. I was surprised how it all works. And I did the genetic testing as well.
Mhm.
And my, you know, with my grandma dying, and then my aunt had precancerous cells. I don't even know what that means.
Uh-huh.
She told me that, you know, she's like, why had precancerous cells? And I was like, I'm not really sure what that is.
Yeah.
And then my sister had a lump removed like a while back. And I'm like, there has got to be something in our family. And they said, we don't have the gene, but there's something familial.
Uh-huh.
And I did grow up on a farm, and who
Okay.
knows?
Yeah, I
I
had
was like,
a previous guest who it runs on her father's side of the family. So far, nothing's shown up in the genetic testing, but the paternal grandmother, two paternal aunts,
hmm,
her sister, and someone else on her father's side of the family have all gone through breast cancer.
I mean, it's a
And
lot.
yeah, it's and they're in, if I want to, they're on the East Coast somewhere, and
Mhm.
evidently the rate there is pretty high.
It's
So
funny, there
yeah,
it could be just where you're literally parked at.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know, it doesn't have to be genetic. And you know, and what do you do with that information? You know, if I was, you know, do I
Hmm.
tell Quinn and say like, hey, you know, this is up to you now. When you get older, you're gonna have to deal with this. Like, that's a
Right.
lot of, that's a
Yeah,
big thing to
it's a
think
lot
about.
of information. Well, and I mean, honestly, just from doing this, what I'm doing with the boob report, only 20%, and I think that's even gone down a little bit, of cancer diagnosis is genetic.
Yeah, yeah.
80% of it is environment, your diet, you know,
Yep.
luck of the
All the
draw.
things.
It's,
Look at the drop, totally.
yeah,
Like, "Oop,
yeah. It's
you."
like, oh, I think it's your turn.
I know.
Is fascinating to me because I was told by the radiologist that all of us have cancer cells in our body. All of us do. It's just where they decide to set up base camp, or if they decide to set up base camp.
I totally believe that.
Yeah.
I think I've always said that. I said, we all have cancer in us.
Yeah.
It's just when it appears, when it how it manifests through
Right.
whatever and what you're feeding it, or if you have something that's feeding it. Mine was estrogen,
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
pouring gasoline on it, so
Yep.
I totally believe that.
Yep. As my daughter says sometimes, God, it just sucks being a girl.
It sure does. It sure does, which also this might help anyone. I don't know if it will or not, but they told me, hey, I'm on tamoxifen, for
Mhm.
the next 5 years or whatever. They said, your period could come back. It might not come back. You might just go right into menopause. If it does come back, don't freak out. Well, mine came back, and it went for 62 days. So I had to go in and have surgery 2 weeks ago to have a DNC, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that can happen. Joy's just, the gift keeps on giving.
I know. It's like, are you kidding?
All right, can I catch a break?
Yeah.
And I got done with this, and then it's like, what is going on?
Right.
So
Well, I was actually starting to go through menopause when I got my diagnosis. So I was so off schedule, and I had been on the pill for a while. So my doctor was like, okay, you can't take that anymore. You have to
Yeah.
not take that. And I literally started my period the night before my bilateral mastectomy. So I got to wear a lovely, huge hospital pad while I was getting my boobs removed. And I was like,
great.
are you kidding me?
So
What?
great.
Seriously?
I mean, totally. I mean, there has been times when I'm like, I couldn't possibly, I don't even know what the feeling of embarrassment is anymore, because like, it doesn't reside in my body anymore. I mean, same, they're pushing me down the hallway and they were like, well, let's have you walk and go to the bathroom first. And I'm literally just bleeding all over their floor. And I was like, I am mortified right now.
Yeah.
And I can't even care. I'm like,
yeah.
well, there that is.
Exactly. Well, I joke with my husband. So many people have seen, touched, photographed, these things here on my chest that it's like, whatever,
Totally.
It's no, I don't care. I could be a Playboy right now. So
I am with you. I am with you. And sometimes I forget, like, because they're so not mine, they're not a part of me. They're just like this object. I tell people all the time, they feel like a pair of misshapen socks rolled up and stuffed under my skin. And they're like, well, that sounds horrible. And I'm like, well, I'm just telling you what it feels like. I could run into a wall at full speed into my boob and not know.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, I think a lot of people forget this, Heather, is that when you have a mastectomy, bilateral or just, a lateral mastectomy, they're removing all the breast tissue. So people were like, oh, are you going to go bigger with your boobs? No, because there's no cushion there. It's just the skin and the muscle, and that's it.
And they look like weird little floating circles. Yeah. Like, oh.
So yeah, I'm like, no, not going bigger. I'm not stretching my skin out like that, because I knew going in, that's what was happening, but I didn't realize until I got the implants, it was 90 days that I wore my expanders. And then I was like, I'm done, take them out. I'm going to hurt somebody if these do not come out of me. I just didn't realize how uncomfortable and painful that those implants were.
Awful. And the amount of like sleep you lose, because if you roll to one side at the bag, like shift, and I could feel the nozzle.
Yeah.
The nozzle of the, where they would put the syringe in. And I was like, I hate these so much.
I know. My husband and I tried to have a sense of humor about it. He would go with me when they would, fill them, and he would be down at the foot of the bed, watching, and he's like, oh, it's like they're airing up a tire,
Kind of is. Totally. I feel you. I took one of my girlfriends to go with me on the day I got my tubes out from my drains. I felt so bad for her. I could see her face like go white. She was like, oh. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. She was like, they were really far in there, Heather. I was like, oh, I guess I didn't know how far. I didn't know it would be really gross to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. The person's like,
She was like, oh, Heather.
Well, now you're back teaching at your gym. Everything's back. That's awesome.
Feeling great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, after this last little surgery that I had to have, like, I mean, even that, like 2 weeks out, I feel 1 million times better.
That's
I feel like I have color back in my face, and
right.
I feel like, somebody watched me play volleyball this weekend and they were like, gosh, you look great. And I was like, thank you. And I felt great, and I played great, and I moved well, and I was like almost, normal. I
Yes.
say normal is, but I picked a good year to go down, I guess, to be in COVID when I had to go through all this, because a lot of people sat down just voluntarily, like,
Just were
you know
like,
what? I'm
yeah.
just going to sit down too. So I had a lot of people to sit down with, and then to kind of regain strength and get back into shape with too, like, I mean, I taught 2 classes this morning, and I trained a personal training gal, and got home, got my kiddo, jumped on this, and I feel like,
I love it.
yeah, feeling good.
That's awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate you taking the time in that oh so busy schedule to join us for the podcast, and for inspiring me to get back into playing volleyball, because I'm so excited. Yeah, we talked about this before. I'm going to start playing in about 5 weeks. So it gives me time to work out a little bit and get things going. So
I love it.
yeah, I'm excited. So, well, Heather, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you taking the time, and good luck going forward. I know you're just going to rock it.
Yeah, I got this.
That's awesome. It is so cool. I'm all about science, and I find the concept of the cold cap fascinating. A very big thank you to Heather for sharing her experience with us. We have links and information where you can learn more about her on our website at www.theboobreport.com/podcast, episode 26 show notes. And a very big thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to like and follow us, and definitely share the podcast with your friends. You can become an active listener and support this podcast by clicking on the podcast link on our website at theboobreport.com. Take care.